Yesterday afternoon, I received a call from Dan at Sea Lion Caves reporting an entangled sea lion inside the cave here. And he was interested in knowing what options might be available for disentangling the animal. I then made some connections. I made phone calls and emails to NOAA Fisheries in Seattle to find out from them what would be permissible. Going into the cave here is not legal in most situations, and it requires special permission to do so. So we had to find out for sure that we could actually get access inside the cave before we made preparations to actually get people organized to come down and make an effort to disentangle this animal. We have not yet before disentangled a Steller sea lion in Oregon, to my knowledge, and it's a serious endeavor. Disentangling this animal involves risks to the animal as well as to the people trying to rescue it. So we have to take a lot of precautions to make sure we're not putting people in harm's way unnecessarily, and make sure that we can safeguard the safety of the animal as well. Steller sea lions are aggressive animals. They're dangerous. They're defensive. They don't know that we're here to help them. So they're going to do what any wild animal will do and become defensive and try to, fight basically to either get away or to ward us off. So we needed to bring in a veterinarian who could sedate the animal and calm it down to enable us to get close enough and to subdue it so that we could basically cut the material away from its face. We had to get a knife right up and cut multiple strands of this net off from the animal's face. So in order to do that, we had to gain access to the animal in several different ways, and we're very happy with the way things turned out. We were successful in getting the gear off the animal. So.
Okay, now it looked like quite a team. About the team.
We had several people from the Oregon State University Marine Mammal Institute staff as well as interns come down and assist with equipment and getting ourselves down into the cave so we could access the animal in a safe manner. We had people handling crowder boards, which are big sheets of plywood basically with handles on them that enable us to defend ourselves basically from the animals should they decide to lunge toward us, in a way of potentially moving an animal if we need to move it away from us or against another surface. We had some cutting instruments, some knives that were available. We had ropes that were attached at the top of the access into the cave so we could lower ourselves down safely and lower our equipment down as well. That's a very good question. The animals responded initially with a little bit of fear. We opened the gate to go in, and they're certainly not accustomed to people entering the cave. The animals immediately close to the access point fled when they saw us coming, but for the most part, the majority of animals in the cave just went about their business. They probably didn't pay much attention to us at all, and they were not startled, and they did not show any concerns that we were there. We may have affected a dozen or two animals initially. They went into the water and they probably came back on shore again a few minutes later somewhere else. There was minimal disruption, frankly. I was expecting there might be more than there was, so we're very pleased by the level of inactivity that most of the animals showed us when we went into the cave.
Okay. Prognosis of the animal.
Well, the animal's a bit underweight. She had probably gone for some time without eating, so she's malnourished. She's going to have to spend some time getting back into her foraging regimen and eating on a regular basis again. She's probably somewhat groggy from the sedative that was used, so that'll take a little bit of time to wear down. She's probably going to want to come ashore and get some rest shortly. But we're very happy that there were no serious injuries that were involved from the netting. It seems like there really was no damage to her tissue that we could see. No infections, no sign that there was any gross abnormality to her other than the fact that she had lost some weight. She probably hadn't eaten for several days, if not longer. So it's good that we got to her when we did. She was becoming weaker over the last 24 hours when she was first sighted. She certainly would not have survived had she not been disentangled. Had the gear not been removed, she would have starved to death eventually. She was pinned to a rock, and she really couldn't move more than 10 feet in any direction from the rock. So she could not gain access to the water. She couldn't eat. She would have starved to death eventually had we not done anything.
Now, if people are watching,
if you find a stranded or entangled animal on the beach, do not try to disentangle it yourself. The proper thing to do is to call the Oregon State Police hotline number. Disentangling sea lions is not a common event for us. This is actually the first effort of this type that I've been involved in the last 5 years being in Oregon. The situation here was actually ideal for us because we had a controlled situation where the animal could be approached in a relatively controlled manner. The animal was tethered down to a rock, so we could actually approach it without it fleeing back into the water. In most of the cases when an entangled animal is sighted, it is still free to move about and go back into the water and to avoid direct contact with people. And that typically makes them inaccessible to a disentanglement effort. This animal was tethered to a rock and it really could not escape. So we had the benefit of being able to gain direct access to it. And having the veterinarian on hand with a sedative that could calm the animal down further, that enhanced our ability to gain direct access to it. But in most cases, an entangled animal is not that approachable. It may be holed out on a rock or on a dock, but if you try to get to it, it's simply going to jump in the water and swim away. So it's generally not as feasible an operation as this was today. This was sort of an ideal situation, so we wanted to take advantage of it. This is the net that was wrapped around the animal's neck and face, and it's a trawl net. Marine mammals, sea lions in particular, find themselves entangled in marine debris quite often. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have access to those animals regularly, but we estimate that hundreds of sea lions are probably affected by marine debris like this each year off the West Coast. Sea lions are naturally curious animals, and they'll often put their heads into things to investigate them out of curiosity. So unfortunately, it happens quite often that they'll find themselves wrapped around with a net or any other type of marine debris that happens to be floating out in the ocean, which underscores the need for us all to be more careful with our garbage and our waste and debris, especially when we're on the water. We need to be mindful of marine mammals and birds and any other animals that are out there that may potentially be caught up in gear that they cannot free themselves from on their own.